I'd like to welcome everybody to Gettysburg National Military Park. Yankees and all. All right.
How'd you know you're from New York?
New York? I don't know. It's the Yellowstone hat, I guess, right? Yeah. So my name is Matt. What we're going to do today is we're going to have a Devil's Den tour. We're going to go out and we're going to concentrate specifically on this sector of the battlefield. Now, before we do that, I'm going to start with big picture and then I'm going to go down to small picture. All right, Devil's Den. Let's start with the beginning. These rocks which are out here, which are unusual rock outcroppings, I mean, they still attract people 151 years after the battle. What may surprise you, ladies and gentlemen, is that before the battle, the unusual rock outcroppings around Devil's Den were actually an attraction then. In the 1850s, 1840s, people liked to come out to Devil's Den just like you do today and relax. They like to picnic out here. The name Devil's Den actually does not come from the battle. It actually predates the battle itself. I cannot give you an exact origin of the word, but I can tell you that it probably is an Indian origin to it, or possibly the legend of the snake. For all the ghost hunters out here, which somebody I drove up when I got here about 15 minutes ago, I asked some people if they wanted a tour and they told me no, they were hunting for orbs. I said, well, good luck to you. Right there, and so I don't guess I can give them a tour of that. But as far as I know, it has nothing to do with cults or ghosts or anything else, as far as that matter. I hate to burst your bubble, but as far as we know, it's probably an old Indian name. Now, with that in mind, Devil's Den, though, when you place that name on a battlefield, that's a cool name. How many battlefields you ever been to that's called Devil's Den? I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. All right, so people still flock to this because of the rocks and because of the name. Now, how do we get specifically here to 1863, where of all the places on this green planet out here, right, is a, never mind, a green planet over here on her arm. Out of all the places that are here on this planet, why do we end up having this as being part of the battlefield? Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, on July 2nd of 1863, and keep in mind that when I say the end, I mean for that moment in time. It all depends on when you're talking about during the battle up here, all right? It all depends about when you're talking about. The end of the Union line for a few hours on July 2nd was actually here in Devil's Den. Now, if you look in front of you, right up here, what is this hill called? Little Round Top. Probably more famous than Devil's Den, arguably. But traditionally, nowadays, people think that Little Round Top is the end of the Union line on July 2nd. Well, technically it is for a moment in time. But before Little Round Top was the end, it was Devil's Den. So how do we get to this place right here? Well, the reason that Devil's Den ends up important is because of Uncle Dan Sickles. How many of you have heard of Dan Sickles? The amazing Uncle Dan. Yes. Uncle Dan Sickles, ladies and gentlemen, was out of 7 Union Corps commanders, was the only non-West Point graduate. And arguably, and probably, he conducts the most controversial move of the Battle of Gettysburg. When, on July 2nd, as a Corps commander, there's 7 Union infantry corps in the Army. Dan Sickles is a commander of one of those 7. He's got about 10,000 men, a little under 10,000 men in his corps out here. He decides to move his corps out in front of the rest of the Union Army. In other words, he's supposed to be back here. All right, aligning himself with Little Round Top. But what he does is thrust his corps out into the middle, from the left flank, juxtaposed out in front of the rest of the Union line out through here. All right, I need some kids to pull this off. All right, you two, come over here. I'll be getting to you in just a second. Well, actually, come on, I'll take you, all right? We'll do that right now. If you'll stand back here, let's see how I want to do this. You can stand beside him. This is going to be pretty funny. Okay, let's do it this way. Ready? Big round top, little round top. You like that? Dad likes that? Okay. That's pretty funny. I'm the Union 3rd Corps. I'm Dan Sickles. She, what's your name, young lady?
Sylvia.
Sylvia, how nice to have you today. Welcome to Gettysburg. Remind me to give you some trading cards afterwards, courtesy of Gettysburg National Military Park, where you can find all your amenities here at the 6,000 acres. You are going to represent the 2nd Corps, all right? So Dan Sickles is supposed to align, remember I'm reversed from you, align his right flank with the 2nd Corps, connect with the 2nd Corps, and his left flank over here on Little Round Top. Pretty simple, isn't it? So what Dan Sickles ends up doing is stepping out front to this area. And what does he not do? He does not connect with the 2nd Corps, and he does not connect with Little Round Top. And here we get in specifically where we are now. The left flank, my left hand right here, is where we're standing right now. Devil's Den. The apex is the peach orchard, the right flank is along the highway. This, where we're standing on the left flank, is where we're going to concentrate upon today. The end of Dan Sickles' line. And in theory, for one moment in the battle, the end of the Union Army, as far as its line, right here. It ended right here where we're standing. Okay, let me see if big round top, little round top, 2nd Corps. Everybody happy? Mediocre? Maybe. Okay. That's what you get. Who's he act like? Oh, his mother. Okay. Oh, the old redhead, I see. Okay. She doesn't look too happy about it. Forever eulogized in YouTube. Okay, if you think about it out here, ladies and gentlemen, what has Dan Sickles done? He's out here all by himself, and he doesn't have enough men to defend his position. Keep that in mind as I go from the big picture down to the smaller picture. We're now going to go from the Corps, Dan Sickles' Corps moving out front, to smaller units, such as divisions. Divisions comprise corps. Brigades comprise divisions. And regiments comprise brigades. This division, there is one brigade holding this ridge. That is from Hobart Ward, as Tom Holbrook likes to say, just like saying the name, Hobart Ward. I mean, who would name their kid Hobart? Oh, you're named Hobart. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's a, you know, whatever. John Hobart Ward. What's his full? John Henry Hobart Ward. It's got a good name. I like John Henry. Hobart, though, I don't know how you get, you know, so it's like you get, it would lead to a lot of fights. Never mind, it's Johnny Cash. Okay. No, he's named Sue. How do you do? If you look around through here, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to go down to this area right here, which is going to be Hobart Ward's brigade holding Devil's Den. Okay, let me, as we do this, what I need you to do right now is we're going to about face. I'm going to walk to the other side of the line. I'm going to stand in the road on top of here, and I want you to look toward the Confederate position. Okay, now we're at stop number 2. Hope y'all aren't too tired from the exertion right there. Now looking out through here, ladies and gentlemen, we're now looking roughly toward the west. Out here in the distance is going to be Seminary and Warfield Ridge. Basically the same ridge. We just have to be fancy here at Gettysburg. But basically that continuous ridge right there is where the Confederate forces are going to come up on July 2nd of 1863. They are going to be under the command of James Longstreet, Lee's 1st Corps commander, Lee's warhorse. I don't need to go into specifics, but suffice it to say that Longstreet is late that day. For whatever reason, which we could debate for several hours out here, Longstreet is not getting into position until around 3 o'clock. Around 3 o'clock, the Confederate artillery is going to open up along that ridge out in the distance. That's going to be Hood's division of Longstreet's Corps out here. Hood's division sitting out there deploys his batteries, and they start exchanging cannon shots with the Union artillery under James Smith, his New York battery, 4th New York battery, which is positioned here in Devil's Den. That's some heck of a shots right here. But the Union actually has in this position rifle cannons. If you want to get historically correct, the guns are not located where you're standing today. They're actually further up on the ridge. But as they drew this monument right here, ladies and gentlemen, as they erected their monument right here, when you erect a monument, you want the monument to be visible. Visible. That's right. You want people to see it. That's right, Big Round Top. If you look at it out here, that monument, that battery monument, should actually be up here on top of the ridge, historically. And you would be surprised, once you get into the minutia of the Battle of Gettysburg, you would be surprised how much this is debated. This is what Gettysburg battle buffs get into, the exact position of the guns. What you need to know about Smith's guns is they've got a good artillery position to be firing long range at the Confederates over here, don't they? They're up on top of a ridge, they're higher up, and they've got rifle guns. You can tell because they're black tubes. Iron guns, has rifling in them. What you also need to think about, though, is it an asset or a liability if the Confederates get close underneath this ridge?
Liability.
That's right, they shoot over them. So therefore it becomes a liability because the cannoneers, the Union gunners, cannot depress their tubes that far out here. That could be a problem. Okay. With that in mind, Smith's gun starts to open up and they have a lively artillery duel. Then looking over here in this direction, where I was just standing out here, in that distant tree line, which you see off in that direction, you're going to see Confederate infantry start to appear. They're going to form up. They're going to come out of the wood line in column, and once they get out into the field, they're going to start to form into battle formation. As they start to form into those double ranks, which we're so familiar with, Napoleonic tactics, Smith's guns up there on the ridge are going to redouble their efforts. And the shells are going to start to strike among the Confederates. They could see it. It will look like poofs of mushrooms, if you will, going off. White smoke as they will explode around the Confederates. And they could probably see some Confederates fall. You have to remember, though, that Johnny Reb over here all these troops over here are veterans. They're not going to scare because of some artillery fire out here on the battlefield. So the Confederates start to come through here and out through what you see in the distance is the Slider farm right there. They're going to start to come off the ridge line right there through here, and where you see the Slider farm in the distance, Union sharpshooters are going to start to open up against them. They're actually Union skirmishers out here. But anyway, long story short, the Union skirmishers start to fall back over here toward Big Round Top. That's that wood line right here. And what do? The Union forces draw the Confederates after them. So the Confederate line, which should be contiguous through here, is actually going to start stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching until gaps start to open up within the line. That's going to be a problem. But that plays into the fighting here at Devil's Den. Because of the Confederate line stretching, ladies and gentlemen, that is the reason why you have Texans and Arkansas men, 2 regiments, Corps Division Brigade Regiment. You have 2 regiments of 4 out of the brigade, attacking here at Devil's Den, and 2 other regiments from that brigade attacking Little Round Top, because they separated. Does that make sense to everybody? And one half went this direction and stayed with the Alabamians that were on their right, the Texans' right, and the other half kept straight ahead toward Devil's Den. But that is how you end up with 2 Confederate units that are going to be coming up here and attacking Devil's Den. They don't have that many troops initially, is what you need to bring away from it. That's getting down to small picture. This is a very brief stop, but what we're doing right now is we're following the road into Rose Woods. I don't have a lot to talk about at this stop, and my next stop is where we'll do most of the talking. But what we're doing is the road basically follows the battle line of Hobart Ward. And remember what I said at the last stop. The Texas Brigade, which is 3 Texas regiments and 1 Arkansas regiment comprising the 4 regiments comprising the brigade, have split. And so now you've got the Arkansas men, the Texas men coming toward here. With the 86th New York, which is right behind you, one of my favorite monuments because of the symbolism. You can read that for yourself. I yield him unto his country and his God, right there. I always like this. Just patriotic is a different thing, a different symbolism, a different type of patriotism back then inside their symbolism. Anyway, the 86th New York is part of Hobart Ward's line. What I want you to also note is that Rose Woods is pretty much the parameters that it was in 1863. What we've lost and what is a problem out here is that we don't have the animals anymore. And so the animals would do what to this underbrush?
They chew it up.
They chew it up. They tramp it down and chew it up. So you could see into Rose Woods a lot further than you can today. And you could see those, therefore you could see those Confederates coming and vice versa. The Confederates could see the Union up there. Okay, what we're going to do is continue our hike. I wanted to give you a breather. We're going to continue our hike down to the intersection and hang a left, and we're going to stop at the 20th Indiana Monument and find out what happens here. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've done is we've walked down the road from the opening at Devil's Den into Rose Woods, and we're now standing here at the 20th Indiana Regimental Marker, which is basically the right center of the Union line as it's facing through here. So, in other words, from Union left to right, your left to right as you're standing here, it'd be the 124th New York, the 86th New York, the 20th Indiana, and the 99th Pennsylvania over here, back in the woods. You would have the 4th Maine, which would be positioned basically where you parked your cars today, kind of guarding the flank right there. But right here, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take away the road, I want you to take away the monument, I want you to open up the tree line, the forest right here, and I want you to place yourself in the shoes of one of those Indiana men that day. And you're standing here in the woods. And you can hear firing going on, but how far can you see? Combat is tunnel vision, and as the accounts I'm about to tell you are very tunnel vision like, because how far even with the clearing open could you see? 30, 40, 50 yards maybe? More than you can see today, but you're still in the woods. And what are you focused upon? Straight ahead. Everything goes straight ahead. Okay, so with that in mind, 20th Indiana has 286 men under Colonel John Wheeler sitting right here. The men are nervous. They've been in fights before, but they're nervous. The Confederates are coming, and they can hear them probably coming through the woods, but they can't see them. I told you at the earlier stop that the Confederates confronting Devil's Den were going to be the 3rd Arkansas and the 1st Texas, from Confederate left to right. So that means the 3rd Arkansas is going to enter the woods, and the pop, pop, pop. Union soldiers or Civil War soldiers used to say that musket fire from a distance sounded like somebody chopping wood. I've always liked that comparison. The axe hitting the wood right there. And so those muskets start popping off, out there as the skirmishers. Those are the people in front of the battle line are out there feeling for the Confederates. The Confederates coming up through here are going to brush aside that skirmish line, and those Union soldiers will come running out of those woods back to the main battle line, hollering something like, "They're coming, they're coming, get ready, get ready." And the officers, the Union officers, would then brace their men. If they weren't loaded already by that time, they would be loaded. You would start hearing those metallic ramrods going down into the muskets as they shoved those bullets down into the base of the gun right there. Everybody flinging, powder being torn, paper being shoved in there, balls going down, grease balls, musket balls going down on top of it. As they start to come up through here, he just had to come up through here. Y'all watch yourself. He's a patriotic fella. What do? There's only so much we can control. Visitor safety first, of course. 20th Indiana's sitting out here. They're getting ready for the attack, and the Confederates are going to start firing from a long distance away. But you think about the 3rd Arkansas. That's the primary Confederate unit that enters up in here. It's one regiment, okay? And they're going up against 3 regiments. Okay, Pennsylvania and 2 New York regiments. Who's got the upper hand?
Confederates. I would say.
Who's got more men?
What they would have.
The Union has got more men, don't they? Keep that in mind, because you're right too, all right? But let the story unfold. Initially out here, the Union has the upper hand. They have the higher ground, the Confederates have the lower ground. The Confederates do not know where they're going, and these woods are doing what to their formation? They're breaking it up. These Arkansas men come on though, and they start firing. The bullets start whistling through here. The Union men brace themselves, and as the Confederates draw closer, they open up with volleys of musketry, ripping through the forest. Kind of like a row of firecrackers that you've set off, you know. Pop, 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 all the way through here. The wind, unlike today, is not blowing 150 years ago. And what do those muskets produce a lot of? Smoke. So what do these woods fill with? A lot of white smoke, and it hangs out here heavier than a Led Zeppelin concert. It's a rock band from the 70s. In case you didn't. All right, so, those of you uninformed. Led Zeppelin. Okay, so looking out through here, the Arkansas men are going to do the best they can. They're going to start shooting. And it is mano a mano, toe to toe, they start firing each other. But the Arkansas men are literally, the Union soldiers walk into the Arkansas men. I don't mean literally, but I mean literally. They walk forward shooting as they advance, and they drive the Arkansas men back out of Rose Woods, where they have to reform and readjust. But what do the Arkansas men know now? They know where the enemy is. And Colonel Manning, who's in charge of them, of that regiment, is going to wait a few moments, because coming up on his right is the 1st Texas, that 2nd Confederate Regiment. Now he's got support over here. He knows where the Union forces are, and he knows where his supports are. And so they drive back into the woods right here. This time, Manning, instead of having a dense line of infantry, is going to disperse his line into 1 man deep, a single file rank, if you will. In other words, he's extending his line over to his left or to your right, if you're in the crowd today. And he's covering more front. Those Arkansas men with that yell come on through the woods again in the Arkansas style, and they're coming up through here, and they engage the Union forces again in hand-to-hand not hand-to-hand, but close quarters fighting. You could hear the bullets impacting the bodies up through here. Now, this is what I like about Gettysburg. It's the places that you can get to today that are really neat, which are pristine, which have really not been touched in 150 years. Now, I don't really recommend you trying it today, but it is a free country and you're welcome to walk out there if you like. But if you happen to be here in the wintertime when the foliage is down and the bugs aren't around, you can walk out into that, down that depression, which is behind me right now, and you can walk out into a cul-de-sac that is still the same terrain that those Arkansas men were fighting on 150 years ago. They talk about it. They talk about being in a bowl, in an ellipse. And if you go down in there without the foliage on the trees, you can see it. And you can see how the Arkansas men would come. You'd see exactly what they do. They would shoot, and then they would do what? They would descend down into the gully and reload. Then they would ascend and shoot and go back down. That way they somewhat protect themselves, even though they don't have any fortifications per se down in there. There is not a trail, there is not a monument, there is nothing to mark their spot. It is only their memories and what their recollections were. But it's pristine. So, kind of cool, isn't it? So with the 20th Indiana fighting it out right here, the 99th Pennsylvania on the Union right over here, to your right. All of a sudden, during the midst of this firefight, the 99th Pennsylvania gets orders to go to the left, to extend the line. So what do? The 99th Pennsylvania ends up being, where'd the big round top go? Anytime before Sunday, sweetheart. Okay, it's the 20th Indiana right here. I'm the 99th Pennsylvania. We're two Union regiments. All you got to do is stand there. 99th is going to do what? Pivot and march behind the 20th Indiana and back to where Smith's Battery Monument is today. In fact, the 99th Pennsylvania Monument is on top of the ridge where Smith's Battery's gun should be today. But that is the reason it's not over here. It's back over here. All right, in that area. All right, so with that in mind, what does that do to the Union line right here? That's right, it takes Union soldiers, a regiment, an entire regiment, out of the front of the Arkansas men. So what does the 20th Indiana have to do? Turn this way. They have to extend themselves, don't they? So they have to go from being the main body to thinning themselves out. Put your arms out, like this. And so they have to stretch their lines further into the gap, which they would extend 2 companies over here on the right flank into that area to cover that gap right in there. And what do the Arkansas men do? They can feel, I have to assume that they can feel the slackening in the Federal fire. But now they've got problems too, in their own right, because they're coming up in here to confront the 20th Indiana, 86 New York. They're coming up in here, and all of a sudden, you want me to see how long you can hold your arms up? Okay, all right. Face me. Okay, I'm the 3rd Arkansas. All of a sudden they got a problem. You can put your arms down. All of a sudden they've got a problem. They come up in here, the 3rd Arkansas, and they start receiving fire from over here. Why is that a problem for the 3rd Arkansas? That's right, it's on their left flank. Very good, Boston. They're right over here, they start getting shot at from their left flank. This is the arrival of the 17th Maine. You can find, and they are on the edge of those woods. It's hard for you to see today, but if you look up above the treetops, you can see the end of the woods. That'll be very hard to pick up on camera, but the 17th Maine is over there in that direction. And they're firing into the flank of the 3rd Arkansas. So what does Arkansas do? They turn and they pivot. They make themselves into an L, both to confront the 17th Maine and to confront the 20th Indiana. But it boils down to a stalemate where the Arkansas men can't keep the momentum up. But they can keep shooting if they don't advance. Thank y'all. Appreciate it, boys. Very kind. Okay. 286 men in the 20th Indiana. Now you count this, all right? You figure this in your own head. In 25 minutes of fighting, out of 286 men, the 20th Indiana is going to lose 146. That's a lot. That's over 50%. I'd have to do some more figuring. Pull my shoes off. Do some figuring. Never mind. Okay. So, if you think about it out here, their line is thinning rapidly. And what is all this shooting done to their ammunition? It's wiped it out. And so by this time, right here where you're standing, by this time, they are rifling the cartridge boxes of the dead and the wounded, trying to keep the rate of fire going up through here. Colonel John Wheeler, commanding the 20th Indiana, is riding behind the line on a horse. And he turns to give a command, and a Confederate bullet, an Arkansan, is going to shoot him in the temple. And Wheeler topples from the horse. The lieutenant colonel comes up to take command. He gets shot. That leaves him in command of a captain. The captain sends a messenger running to the rear to say, "Bring me more ammunition." The messenger comes back. There's none to be had. Fire your last rounds and try to get out the best you can. How would you like to be in that position? What would it feel like? I mean, I don't have any answer for that. Everybody's got their own answer for that. It's going to be chaos beyond anything. Confusion and chaos with all this smoke, with the anguish, pain going on, the cries of the wounded, the dead, of course, being heaped up further and further on the ground right here. This is ground zero for Civil War combat in the Rosewoods. A very bloody affair. What we're going to do right now is we're going to backtrack a little bit to the 124th New York, where we're going to talk about the New Yorkers and their valiant stand outside of the triangular field. Looking around through here, ladies and gentlemen, we're now standing back at the edge of Devil's Den. If you pan back behind me, that is going to be our first stop back there in the distance. So Rosewoods is back behind you, obviously, or back behind the camera. And now we're now standing at the edge of the triangular field. Now the triangular field, ladies and gentlemen, is one of our more famous ghost stories as far as what's happening out here. Okay? The triangular field is supposedly where no picture can be taken. And back before there was digital cameras and you could get automatic pictures up here, they would actually take, rangers would be asked to take a picture of somebody in the triangular field, and they would take their finger and place it over the lens as they were taking it, you know? And so when the people got back home, they would develop the pictures. You remember you used to have to develop pictures. And what would end up happening? Oh my gosh. It's true.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is. It's terrible. Okay? It's terrible. I know. But, you know, triangular field right out here. Now, as far as the triangular field, the base of the triangle is right here. You're not going to be able to see it all, so you just have to take my word for it. But the corner of the triangle, the base and the corner of the triangle right here in front of you, that stone wall. The triangular field extends, the base of the triangle extends over this rise right here where you see that big boulder, and then on the other side of the rise in the declivity, it starts to cut back. On this side, on our side, on the right side of the triangular field, it basically follows the Rose Woods, the outline of it right here. Now, it's not a perfect triangle. It doesn't have a point down at the bottom of it. It's actually got a flat nose on it, flat tip, if that makes sense. But it does resemble a triangle in the rough sense of the term right there, as it goes down through there. Don't embarrass the children. Now, with that in mind, this is the spot right in here where the 124th New York is going to take position. That is the left flank. We were basically on the right flank of Hobart Ward's line. Now we're on the left flank, the 124th New York. The 124th only has 220 men in their regiment. Let me put that into context for you. Their line only extends 70 yards. It is also, the 124th is one of the most unique regimental histories that I've ever seen, because it has a fold-out map inside of it. I've never seen this before or since, but every soldier in the regiment is listed in their place in line. Isn't that cool? I mean, it's even got where the sergeants were standing, the file closers. I mean, I don't know how they recreated that. The battle line of July 2nd. I've never seen anything like that. Now, they were known as the Orange Blossom Regiment because they were raised from Orange County, New York. As long as C keeps nodding her head, I'm in good shape right over here, all right? Because she loves the 124th New York. So, their line is so thin, but they're the left half, that they actually have to detach a company. They're somewhere over in this area, probably generally in the area we're standing in. But their line is so short that they have to extend a company as skirmishers to connect with the 86th New York, off to the right. You getting the picture? And now, with the 3rd Arkansas attacking over here, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the 1st Texas, attacking up through the triangular field. The 1st Texas. The 1st Texas. These are some of the best combat troops, as the gentleman was saying earlier, some of the best combat troops in the Army of Northern Virginia. And now they look at the base of the triangular field, and they look up to here, and they say to themselves, this is one heck of an objective to try to take. But in true Texas fashion, they come on with that yip, that Texas yell, and they come up and they attack. The first attack must not have been that hard, meaning they didn't try that hard, for lack of a better word. Maybe they weren't organized, maybe they didn't have momentum. It's kind of a king of the hill type situation. But the second attack, some of the Texans are going to claim that they're going to get close enough to the New Yorkers that the blast of their muzzles from their muskets are going to singe the uniforms of the Union soldiers. That close, if that's true. But pretty close. But what do the New Yorkers succeed in doing? They succeed in driving them back. But they take casualties, and they don't have that many casualties to take. Now, throughout this, ladies and gentlemen, if we'll pan the camera over here, throughout this engagement, the regiment is commanded by this gentleman right here, Colonel Van Horn Ellis. And he is placed atop this monument right here, much like he stood on July 2nd. One New Yorker said that Ellis stood during all this firefight much like a farmer watching his fields, with his arms crossed and impassionately just viewing it all. And that's what they wish to capture in stone to last for eternity, hopefully. Is Van Horn Ellis. You'll see another reason in just a second. Now, Ellis is somewhere in this area. He's in command of the right half of the regiment. In combat, you divide up the regiment. It's not like he's not the overall boss, but you can't be everywhere at once. So his second in command, Major James Cromwell, is commanding the left half of the regiment, which is extending over to your right, obviously, since I backed you back around. These two are forever going to be written in the story of the triangular field. Let's walk over here just a second. For a brief interlude, what we have here is a veteran of the battle. Nope. This is George Gargis, licensed battlefield guide. And nobody loves Gettysburg National Military Park more than George Gargis. How about a round of applause for old George?
Thank you.
George is always very kind to bring the Rangers water and so forth, and he always shows up even on the hottest of days. Let's about face, and I'll go back and we'll bring up the 124th.
Do you think the men like this kind of interaction and very calm about all this?
The question is, did the men like Van Horn Ellis's demeanor, that laid-back demeanor? Well, yes, they liked it because the soldiers expect what of their leaders back then? They expect confidence, and they expect the officers to lead from the front. Now, that's not exactly what's happening here. But when you're scared, who do you look to?
Leaders.
You look to the leaders. I'm about to tell you a story that's gonna kind of fold into that. But you look to your leaders, and as long as the leaders aren't panicked, my gosh, if he can do it, I can do it. If he can stand up there, I can definitely crouch and fire. All is not lost. Up through here. So yes, they did look for that. Now, in the midst of this, the Texans, in between attacks, the Texans are down at the base of Triangular Field. It's kind of neat if you have the time to walk down to the base of Triangular Field, because those big boulders down there have to be the exact same rocks those Texans were crouching behind. Now, in the midst of this firefight, ladies and gentlemen, this is a story that's hard to believe, but it is written as true by the Texans. But in the midst of this firefight, one of the general's scouts is going to come riding up. Let's just say this is a very brave man. His name is William J. Barbie, a true Texan. He comes riding up on his horse to the front line with bullets flying back and forth. His horse gets shot, and Barbie springs down from the saddle without missing a step on those very boulders which I just described to you down there. On one of them, it's not identified. Barbie is going to climb up on top of it. And he's going to look up at the New Yorkers, and he's going to start saying things to them that are unpleasant. Things you would probably hear in New York City on a regular occasion, and not in Kansas. After a few moments, the wounded Texans are going to start throwing their rifles up to him. And Barbie is going to calmly stand on top of that boulder and fire up here where we're standing at the New Yorkers. Some Texans said he fired 25 times. Now, he's not reloading every time, all right? He's being thrown loaded weapons, so he could fire a little bit faster than you're probably imagining. But he stood up there in the hell of those bullets zipping by him until the inevitable is going to happen, right?
He messed with a New Yorker.
He messed with the New Yorker. Very good. I like that. It's a good play. A bullet is going to come in and hit Barbie in his leg. Wow! Barbie topples off the rock. You can't kill a Texan. Just can't kill him. Barbie climbs back up on the rock. I just have to assume the ball didn't hit his bone. All right, may have gone clean through. It didn't hit an artery either. All right, he climbs back up on the rock. He resumes firing. Probably shouts a few things up here at him and everything. He resumes firing until what happens?
Shot again.
He gets shot again. Another bullet is going to come in and clip Barbie in the leg.
Same leg?
I don't know. You know, I looked that up before I came out here, and I have to assume it was the same leg. But I don't know, actually. It doesn't say. Hits him in the leg again, but a very good question. Don't ask him more questions. I'm just kidding. hits him in the leg again, and he goes toppling off that rock. What does he do? He gets back up. Frazier goes down. All right. He climbs back up on top of the rock. Explain it to him later, all right, as he won't get that. That's right, it is. Very good. Down goes Frazier. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
You sound like a New Yorker. Cosell.
Was Cosell from New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yes, he is.
Well, yeah, that's
Everybody's from New York, right? Okay, so Barbie goes, he topples off the rock for a second time, and he climbs back up there for a third time. He starts firing again. This time he gets hit in the chest, right? And he topples back off that rock. And you know what he does? He lays there, but he curses his comrades for not helping him back up on the rock again. Now this is the thing, that I wanted to give you one example of Confederate heroism out here, and then I'm going to turn around and give you two instances of Union heroism out here, or one story, one of each out here. If you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, I can't imagine what seizes a person where they think that they can do that. You know, how do you ever get the courage to climb up on top of that rock and face the music, literally, bullets like that? I mean, I don't know if I could ever do that. I like to say I could, you know. It's sort of like the Medal of Honor winners, if you will. You know, Medal of Honor winners, if they did it on a Tuesday, whatever brave act which they deserve, could they do it on a Wednesday if the same situation happened again? I don't know. It's a moment in time. So I don't know if Barbie could repeat that if the battle was occurring on another day, but he did on July 2nd. Now, returning to the Union side and talking about heroism up here, I told you about Van Horn Ellis and James Cromwell, the two gentlemen commanding this regiment, the 124th New York. In the midst of all this, Ellis is still standing here very nonchalantly. All right? That's all you're going to remember from this tour. Cromwell is not standing. His second in command is not standing nonchalantly. All right? And so what ends up happening, ladies and gentlemen, is Cromwell comes over to Ellis, somewhere where we're standing right here today. And he comes to Ellis and he says, you know, we're losing men. We're losing momentum. We need to attack. Ellis brushes him off. Cromwell goes back to his position. Cromwell comes over a few minutes later for a second time, and he urges Ellis once again to attack. And for a second time, Ellis sends him back to his position. But when Cromwell leaves, the colonel turns to one of his aides, and he tells him to go behind this ridge right here and bring up the horses. In the midst of this firefight, Cromwell and Ellis climb into the saddle. In the midst of this, you know when you climb in that saddle, nothing good is going to come out of that. Nothing. There's nothing good that can happen. Nothing is going to come out of you climbing that saddle that is positive. One soldier rushes up to him, to Ellis, and he says, please, Colonel, please get down. Please get down off the horse. And Ellis looks down at him and he says to that soldier, the men must see us today. What does that mean? What does Ellis mean when he says that?
They need to be inspired.
They need to be inspired. What does it say about his life? His personal life.
Give it up for the cause.
That's right. His life, exactly, his life is worth this moment. Do you think you could come to that moment where you just, you climb into that saddle? And it happened over and over and over again on this battlefield, where that's going to take place. But here at this moment, Cromwell's standing in the saddle, sitting in the saddle way up there. After a few moments, the smoke is pretty thick out here. Cromwell is looking over at Ellis. Both of them sitting in the saddle by this time. And they look at each other, and Ellis nods to Cromwell. And this is something that this is the romance of war. Okay, this is what what I grew up pretending, playing, quote unquote, in Houston, Mississippi, all right? In my parents' pasture. Cromwell on that horse gallops out, draws his sword out of his scabbard, and gallops out and over the top of this wall right here, jumps the wall with his horse, and in front of the New Yorkers waves that sword over his head and screams at his men to charge. The American flag goes forward, the 124th New York state colors go forward, and the rest of the line surges ahead with a loud huzzah. And down through the triangular field go the 124th New York. The Texans, this is the last thing they expected to see, coming down on top of them. Cromwell remains in front of the line, urging the men forward. The Texans recover fairly quickly. They're loading, reloading fairly fast. The New Yorkers, as they get down to the bottom of the triangular field, the Texans, under the supervision of their officers, level their muskets. Those hammers click. And as those New Yorkers yelling come down on top of them, they fire a volley. One New Yorker estimated that they lost 25% of their men in one volley when the Texans let loose. So that's roughly, 50, 60, 70 men in there in one volley. Meanwhile, Cromwell is still in the saddle. And the Confederate officers down there are going along the edge of their men. And they're behind them, and they're touching them on the shoulder, and they're pointing at Cromwell. And they're saying to their soldiers, don't shoot that man, don't shoot that man. Because bravery like this, they don't say that, but bravery like that is universal. And it should be preserved. All right, so they're trying to get that man, to get Cromwell saved. But all of a sudden, as they're dashing down through there, I don't know if this happened on purpose or it just happened, because there's a lot of things flying around in the air right now. But they said Cromwell's dashing along on that horse, and all of a sudden, he turns, he waves the sword, and then he starts to wobble. And he goes forward, and then he goes back, and off the back of the saddle he goes. Tumbles off, slides off the back, onto the ground. Ellis is still behind the line. Colonel Ellis is still behind the line at this time. And seeing Cromwell fall in the distance, Ellis dashes out ahead on horseback, and he's yelling at his men, "My God, men, my God, your major is down. Save him, save him." And the New Yorkers, that battle line which is stopped in the middle of the triangular field, surges ahead again, with Ellis now leading them on horseback. As he's dashing down through there, urging his men to follow him on, all of a sudden Ellis is going to turn to give an order. And as he's halfway through it, he stops. And he starts to reel in the saddle. His horse starts to go out of kilt. And Ellis is going to pitch straight forward off the side of that horse and land among those boulders, head first. He didn't make it. I don't know what killed him, the thunder or the lightning, but he didn't make it. When Ellis goes down, the New Yorkers are running out of momentum at this point. Loss of men, lack of ammunition, and loss of leadership up here. They will recover Cromwell and Ellis's body and bring them back as they retreat up the hill. They drive the Texans back momentarily, but Confederate reinforcements come up under Benning's Georgians, and the handwriting is almost on the wall at this point. Let's about face for one last cool story, and we'll move on to our conclusion. Let me get this car passed and we'll get, come on. That monument right there, which I pointed out to you earlier, to the 124th New York, there's a reason. What did I tell you at our earlier stop? There's a reason why the 124th New York monument's there. It's their battle line. But there's a specific reason why that monument sits upon that rock right there. The reason for that is, ladies and gentlemen, is when Colonel Ellis is brought back up the hill, his body, his lifeless body, is placed on that boulder. That is why the veterans wanted to come here in the post-war years and erect a monument on that spot. Literally, that rock is soaked with his blood. Right there. That is a pretty neat story. And there are hundreds of those here at Gettysburg National Military Park waiting for you to find. Okay, we're going to walk down basically to the big tree down here, and we're going to give our conclusion and finish off the fighting down there. Looking around through here, ladies and gentlemen, we're now back under the best tree on the whole battlefield at this moment. The one giving us all shade. Now, we have walked in the course of this program right here, we have walked the length of Hobart Ward's line. We have started here on the left flank of the Union line on July 2nd in Devil's Den, and we have walked all the way down almost to the exact right flank in Rose Woods, and now we are back. So I told you at our last stop, ladies and gentlemen, I told you at our last stop that the New Yorkers pushed the Texans back but were stopped by Confederate reinforcements. Those Confederate reinforcements are going to be under the command of Rock Benning, and they're all Georgians. And Benning's brigade is going to come up through here right at the nick of time and help these Texans out, who don't have enough men to get that last push over the hill. The Georgians are also going to extend their line all the way around to the south end of Devil's Den. They will be joined over here in this direction by Alabamians, who have shifted around, the 44th and 48th Alabama, who are going to be coming through here. Now, I've told you about the Union forces up here. The 99th Pennsylvania has shifted down. That is their regimental monument up there on top of the ridge right there. Remember, they're on the right, they're now on the left. The 4th Maine is fighting valiantly for its life down here in the parking lot. But they're going to have to give way. With one last surge, the Confederates, Texans, Georgians, some Alabamians, are going to start working their way up this ridge. Now you look at where you're seated today or standing around. Look at these boulders. Smith's guns, Smith's New York batteries up there on top of the ridge. What did we talk about in the beginning of the talk? What is the problem for the artillery now that the Confederates are working themselves among these boulders?
Fire over them.
That's right. You can't fire through them. You can't hit them. So what do the Texans and Georgians wait on? They wait on the cannons to fire, then they pop up from behind those boulders and pick them off. Now it's advantage Confederate because of the terrain. And they're lower. It's hard for those Union guns to depress to hit them. They become prime targets. There are 4 Union cannons on top of that ridge right there. The Georgians surge ahead, the Texans with them. They get up to the top of the ridge right there and they seize upon 3 of those guns. They get 1 out of there, but they end up capturing 3 of those cannons on top of the ridge and push them back. The Union forces, the 124th New York melts away as along with the rest, almost the rest of the Hobart Ward's line. Union's not done though. The 4th Maine, who was down in that parking lot, regroups. And Captain Smith, with tears streaming down his eyes, rushes back behind the hill and begs these Union officers to retake his guns. He doesn't want to lose his cannon. The Union counterattack, along with the 40th New York, 6th New Jersey, they're going to be counterattacking through here, and the Union line surges ahead again. And right here where we're standing, and on top of the ridge, they throw the Confederates back off the top. And the Confederates retreat back down the hill in this direction. The Confederates regroup, and they start working their way, encircling the Union troops, until finally the force of numbers is going to make those Union men fall back and relinquish those cannons, those 3 cannons up on top. And finally, the Confederates are in possession of Devil's Den. Now, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, what you need to know is tactically, Devil's Den is a Confederate victory. Tactically, small battlefield picture. Big picture, what is the true objective of the battlefield, of this area? What is the objective which controls the area? Little Round Top. That is what controls the area out here. And what the Union troops have done here, come on through. What the Union troops have done here, although they did not know they were doing it, but what the Union troops have done here is buy time. They have bought time for Union reinforcements to get to Little Round Top, okay, and they have kept these Confederates that ordinarily would have attacked behind those Union reinforcements. They have kept them engaged here at Devil's Den until even more Union forces can reach Little Round Top. That's the big picture. The Confederates are pretty much spent by taking Devil's Den. They had hit the enemy head on. They had showed a very good account, given a very good account of themselves fighting-wise, but they are out of gas. And the true objective is yet to be captured. All this, of course, hindsight being my benefactor. Devil's Den, ladies and gentlemen, is a microcosm of the bigger picture here at the Battle of Gettysburg. It has all the factors. It has the big picture of being the flank of the Union Army. It has the small picture of these individual men who rise to the occasion on July 2nd. And through their actions and their heroism are going to leave Devil's Den as one of those indelible names in American history that will not soon be, hopefully, forgotten. Thank y'all very much.